Can the law tell you what kind of hair you can and can't have? For the most part, no. Today, people in the United States today are pretty free to style their hair any way they like. They're even free to remove all their hair if they want. Throughout history, though, that hasn't always been the case. In fact, hair has been the subject of a lot of legal anxiety through the ages. As we're going to see today, there are also some specific instances left where the law can tell people what they can and can't do with their hair. A lot of you have probably already figured out some of those modern instances. We're going to start there because America's remaining hair laws are actually some of the oldest laws in the world. I'm talking, of course, about military and police service. Individuals who enlist in the U.S. Armed Forces and certain law enforcement personnel are subject to legal restrictions on their hair. U.S. military hair guidelines are covered under AR 670-1. This is a military regulation that regulates the appearance of soldiers. Militaries thrive on uniformity, discipline, and regulation. When a group of people all look and dress the same, it's easier for them to feel like they're part of a team. That sense of teamwork helps the efficiency of a military unit. By regulating hairstyle, the military creates a uniform appearance that helps forge that group identity. There are also other practical reasons for uniform hair. Short hair or no hair helps to prevent the spread of ticks, lice, and other disease-carrying insects that like to hide or nest in hair. Until relatively recently in world history, this was a major concern. Kids today still contract lice at school. Imagine an army waylaid with lice as they're preparing to engage the enemy. Short hair means a lack of spaces for insects to hide and procreate. It's also easier to keep clean and free of blood, mud, and other hazards that could help spread disease and bacteria. This is the same reason why if you're sent to prison in the U.S., the government can legally cut your hair without your consent. It's to prevent disease outbreaks and insect infestations. Another practical function of military law regarding hair is its role in the battlefield. In antiquity, long hair on men was a major fashion. Looking back at ancient statutes, it's not unusual to come across guys with hair down to their shoulders. Long hair used to be regarded in men as a sign of prestige, wisdom, and learning. Slaves and servants' hair was uniformly kept short to prevent the spread of disease and insects because they tended to sleep in close quarters. Some servants' quarters were even located in barns or closets. So long hair on men was a sign they were no one's slave or servant. That association changed once those long-haired men started to hit the battlefield, though. In an age when hand-to-hand combat was a regular occurrence, it was a standard battle tactic to grab the front of the enemy's long hair and hold him in place while you stabbed him. After many lost hand-to-hand combat with long hair, there were many solutions put into place. The first solution was the mullet. That's not a joke. Some of the earliest recorded mullet haircuts were on Greek soldiers who wanted to keep their long hair but didn't want to give the enemy something to grab a hold of. The Greeks even came up with the idea that Apollo had a mullet to make themselves feel better about the whole thing. Eventually, though, people realized it was just more practical to cut it all down. The Roman politician and general Gaius Marius was one of the first people to come up with the idea of a regular army where soldiers would have standardized weapons and armor. This standardization also included other aspects of a person's appearance, including hair. Hair was regulated at a maximum of about 1 inch. No mullets for the Roman army. Unless you were a general, generals could style their hair however they wanted. On the one hand, you have Scipio, who defeated Hannibal. He went from luxurious following locks to just shaving it all off and going into combat. Other generals, like Tiberius, thought the mullet was benefiting their status since it still carried some connotations of nobility and power. As for the rank and file soldier, though, there wouldn't be much hair to be seen. In most of Western Europe, a short hair became a standard military regulation. Unless a soldier wanted the Stockdale or worse, he'd keep that top cropped. Outside of the military, history has had other laws regulating hair for civic and religious reasons. In many older Jewish communities, men were forbidden from growing their hair long unless they were doing it for religious reasons. Nazarites were Jewish men who took a sacred vow to bring themselves closer to God by separating themselves from worldly things. Taking this vow held them to certain legal obligations. One of those obligations was in not cutting their hair for a certain period of time. Nazarite hair could grow distinctively long. You may have heard of a certain guy named Samson, who's probably history's most famous Nazirite. The punishment, ironically, for violating a Nazarene vow was to shave your head. Nazirites were also legally obligated to shave their heads if they came into contact with the corpse or served as a pallbearer at a funeral. On the flip side of the coin, Jewish women were obligated to cover their hair after marriage. When a Jewish woman got married, she assumed a status of nobility in the community, and the head coverings for women were seen as a sign of dignity. It also served the practical purpose of sending the message she was married and unavailable. Elsewhere in the Jewish community, it was forbidden for men to shave or style their beards. Even today, some Jewish men still refrain from shaving or sculpting their facial hair, although there's no legal ramifications. In some parts of the world, though, shaving can carry serious consequences. In some countries, under Islamic rule, hair is a very serious concern. In Iran, men are only permitted to wear certain hairstyles approved by the state. There are charts available for barbers and their prospective clients. Men who wear unauthorized hairstyles risk having it forcibly shaved off or even getting themselves arrested. Women, meanwhile, must keep their hair entirely covered under threat of imprisonment. In other Middle Eastern and North African countries, where civil law and Islamic law are intertwined, men who shave or style their beards could face serious penalties. Depending on the country and who's in charge at the time, shaving or styling your beard may be classified as a Huddad offense. Huddad offenses are crimes in countries that adhere to the Islamic legal code. Huddad offenses are crimes that are considered to be against both the state and God. Because facial hair is considered holy in Islam, shaving can be interpreted as a kind of blasphemy. Punishments for a Huddad offense run the gamut from public beating to having something amputated to the death penalty. The one exception are mustaches. Some Islamic countries consider large mustaches to be signs of ostentation and fanciness. This idea comes from periods in history when European soldiers and nobility grew giant mustaches. Think Teddy Roosevelt and Vlad Dracula. So having too much mustache can also potentially be a violation of Huddad law. In fact, since the mustache is considered its own unique type of hair, some Islamic legal scholars and attorneys suggest simply shaving the entire mustache off Captain Ahab style. Shaving the mustache is permitted, and it's considered a safer legal bet to have no stash instead of too much. If you're asking what any of this has to do with American law, the answer is quite a bit. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. That means Title VII protects hairstyles worn out of religious devotion. Employers can't fire or discipline someone due to their hair except under certain special circumstances. For example, going back to the beginning, AR 670-1 regulates facial hair so that soldiers can safely wear gas masks. In the latter half of the 20th century, this became a concern for some individuals. Sikhs are an Indian faith that prohibits shaving or cutting hair. Sikhs men allow the hair to grow long and then bundle it up in a turban. Despite what some movies and TV shows may have told you, if you see a bearded guy in a turban, he's Sikh, not Muslim. In the latter half of the 20th century and early 21st century, there was some legal anxiety over facial hair, religion, and the military. Sikh and Muslim soldiers brought a series of lawsuits and legal matters before U.S. courts in an effort to be able to keep their beards and long hair. Soldiers enjoyed a series of legal victories over the years that provided some legal exemptions. In 2010, the U.S. Army granted waivers for Sikh and Muslim soldiers to have beards. The same year, a rabbi petitioned to expand the bearded exemption to Jewish soldiers. He successfully argued that Colonel Jacob Goldstein, a U.S. National Guardsman turned Army reservist, had served his entire 33-year career in the military without ever shaving his beard. Now, we talked a lot about the military, but what about average people? Especially since the Civil Rights Act, most people haven't had to worry about how they wear or don't wear their hair. That hasn't entirely been true for Black Americans, though. Even after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, businesses and especially schools have placed restrictions on Black employees and students' hair on penalty of termination or expulsion. Workplaces and school districts have argued that certain traditional hairstyles are unprofessional, distracting, or interruptive. Kids especially have been impacted by rulings that their parents either have to cut their hair, style it in an acceptable way, or face discipline. Since 1968, numerous cases have been brought before courts throughout the U.S. arguing that attempting to regulate Black Americans' hair is a violation of Title VII. In 2019, California became the first state to pass the Crown Act, which specifically prohibits discrimination based on hair. As of 2025, at least 10 states have adopted the Crown Act, including Texas, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Michigan. Kentucky isn't on that list. Congress passed the Federal Crown Act in 2022 by a vote of 235 to 189. However, it wasn't ratified by the Senate. Some members of Congress are hoping to reintroduce the Crown legislation in the near future. Well, looks like time is growing short for us. We've really only taken a little bit off the top of history of hair and the law. There's a lot more to explore, but you know what they say, hair today, gone tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, Hammer's Law. I'll see you on the next video.